Good afternoon, Bermuda. Today, I am joined by the Minister of Health, Kim Wilson, who will give an update from her ministry. The Minister of National Security, Minister Wayne Keynes, the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Cheryl Peak Ball, and Mr. David Kendall, Director of the Department of Health, are all available to answer any questions from the media. Before I begin my substantive remarks, I would like to express condolences from the Government of Bermuda to the family who lost their loved one on the water this weekend. It's certainly tragic to lose a life so young, but it's a reminder to all of us that we must make sure that we are taking extra precautions when we are out on the water, as it can be dangerous. As we head towards sending more of our people back to work and restoring economic opportunities and jobs in the tourism economy, we understand the concern that many have expressed about the risk that opening our borders may pose. Like you, we have seen the examples of countries who have not successfully managed the reopening of their economies like Bermuda has been able to do, and are also concerned about the potential risks to our loved ones and our community. We have been able to address those concerns through one of the most stringent screening and monitoring processes that will be in place. It is important to note that this entire process is a change from what normally happens when a visitor comes to Bermuda. Before, they just booked the flight, showed up at the airport with their passport, and boarded the plane. We have all been affected or know someone who's been affected by showing up at the airport and they did not have their ESTA for the US or their ETA for Canada. Tomorrow at 11 a.m., Bermuda will launch its own electronic travel authorization form for all travelers to Bermuda, and the Minister of Health will certainly expand on that when she speaks. But it's important to note that a traveler intending to come to Bermuda must complete a traveler authorization form. That form will be vetted, and based upon the answers provided, the Bermuda government will indicate whether or not the traveler is cleared to come to Bermuda. A traveler that does not have the clearance will not be boarded and will therefore not come to Bermuda. All visitors coming to Bermuda will be required to be tested when they arrive, on day 3, on day 7, and on day 14 of their stay. And the number of tests required obviously depends on the length of stay. As we know, we'll be making sure that at the airport, all customs officers, airport workers, and officials will have on appropriate PPE, and there'll be physical distancing measures in place, including physical barriers. Of course, at any point in time, any visitor tests positive, they will be fitted with a quarantine monitoring bracelet and be required to isolate in their room. If they attempt to leave their room, the monitoring device will alert the authorities, who will take the necessary steps to protect our community. With these measures in place, we are confident we can detect early, detect quickly, and contain any positive COVID cases and prevent the spread of this disease in our community. Let me be clear, there is risk involved. While thousands of Bermudians have successfully returned to work, there are thousands more reliant on our tourism economy and want to work, but haven't been able to do so. While the safety net created by the government through the unemployment benefit has been extended, the ongoing cost to the public purse is large. I, however, cannot stress enough, this is not about putting profit or the economy over public health. It is about making sure that people in this country do not go hungry and they have the opportunity to safely get back to work to provide for their families. I am confident that Bermuda can serve as an example to the world on how to manage this virus and how to be successful while allowing persons into your country safely with the right protections in place. A series of videos will be released this week, as well as a social media and radio campaign further explaining the strong protective measures in place and how Bermuda's testing regime and protective measures are some of the strongest in the world. Now we'll hear from the Minister of Health, who will update all about the latest test results and also give the expanded version of the traveler entry process and the electronic travel authorization. Minister of Health.
Thank you, Premier. Good afternoon. Between Sunday and today, there were 378 test results received by the Ministry of Health. None were positive for COVID-19. Bermuda has 146 total confirmed positive cases, and as of today, we only have 2 active cases in Bermuda. One is currently in hospital, but not in critical care. A total of 135 persons have fully recovered, and the total deceased remains at 9. The news of only having 2 active cases remaining is wonderful news for this country. We can all be very proud of this achievement, and particularly as we are on the cusp of being a COVID-free nation. The average age of all of our confirmed positive cases is 60, and the age range of all of our positive cases is from 18 to 101 years. Overall, 57% of all cases are Black, 40% are white, and 3 are unknown or other. The source of all local cases is as follows: 42 are imported, 85 are local transmission with known contact, 15 are local transmission with an unknown contact, and 4 are under investigation. Bermuda's country status is local transmission sporadic cases, and the 7-day average of our real-time reproduction number is below 1. At Thursday's press conference, I detailed the process that incoming travelers, residents, and visitors will be required to take when entering Bermuda as of the 1st of July and in the subsequent days after their arrival. All of this information can be found at coronavirus.gov.bm along with a detailed FAQ document. Again, all of the information that was detailed on Thursday's press conference concerning arrival of travelers and visitors can be located at coronavirus.gov.bm, and a detailed FAQ is also available, which will no doubt answer many of your questions. Today, I would like to talk specifically about the travel authorization application, which is similar to the process that one would have to go through if they were applying for an ESTA when entering the United States. I want to be clear that both visitors and residents entering Bermuda from abroad must apply for this travel authorization prior to travel, which will again be available on the government website at coronavirus.gov.bm under travel page, and this will be available from tomorrow morning. There will be an online application form for returning residents as well as arriving visitors. This travel authorization helps us ensure that our strict testing regime and health protocols are adhered to by all travelers in order to keep our island safe. The application will require travelers to confirm that they have negative COVID test results and to answer questions about their health, like whether or not they have any COVID-19 symptoms, such as fever, respiratory, or gastrointestinal symptoms. A one-time fee of $75 is required when applying for the travel authorization, and this includes all COVID-19 tests required within the stipulated 14-day period. In order to enter Bermuda, visitors will be asked to confirm that they are traveling with health insurance that covers illness and injury outside of their home jurisdiction, including those related to a positive COVID-19 diagnosis while in Bermuda. If they are not traveling with insurance, they must tick the box that states that they fully understand that they will be responsible for all health and accommodation costs should they require treatment and or quarantine, whether related to COVID-19 or otherwise. Once a traveler completes the online form, they will receive an email advising whether it has been approved. If approved, the travel authorization must be shown at the departure gate, either a printed version or directly from your mobile device. Travelers will not be permitted to board without proof of the travel authorization. The travel authorization is only needed when coming into Bermuda. It is not required when leaving. Persons traveling outboard to other countries should research what is required of them by the jurisdiction that they are going to. The government of Bermuda has no control over what other countries require for entry and or free movement around their country. We've received quite a lot of questions calling into the COVID hotline about what the requirements are for other jurisdictions, and we would invite you to research that through the jurisdictions, through either the U.S. consulate or the jurisdiction directly online, as opposed to calling the COVID hotline, because we have no power, nor do we have any of the details as to what each country that you're wishing to travel to requires for their entry requirements. In closing, I would like to urge all residents to please not let your guard down when you are out and about and traveling throughout the community. Please continue the mitigating factors that we've spoken about over and over again. Wash your hands frequently, use hand sanitizer before and after entering any store or public building, shield our medically vulnerable, and continue to wear your mask and keep 6 feet apart if you are not wearing one. We're each responsible for our own health as well as the health of other members in our community. And with more freedoms comes more responsibilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister of Health. And that's certainly good news that we've gone 10 days without any new cases, and we're down to only 2 active cases. As most would be aware, the state of emergency that has been in place in Bermuda since the 1st of April comes to an end tomorrow. Phase 4 of our reopening plan starts on July 1st. One of the changes to Phase 4 and the announcement which was made by Colonel Birch will be that following a meeting of the Cabinet Committee on the Reopening of Bermuda today, and following reports that came back to the Cabinet Committee from the Bermuda's grocers, the Cabinet Committee advised that grocery shopping days will end with the start of Phase 4 on July 1st. So come Wednesday, persons will be permitted under law to attend grocery stores on any given day. The question is, why did this change take so long? The fact that we wanted to ensure that where we had the number of discount days, which we had asked for from the major grocers, to be on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And we wanted to see if the grocers would extend those discount days. Unfortunately, all but one grocer did not take up the offer to extend those discount days. So tonight, I want to give special thanks to the Lindo's group of stores, who has said that they will continue, in the interests of our community, the discount days on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays at the Lindo's stores through the Cup Match holiday. And they wanted to say that in doing so, customers may shop at Lindo's during those days and receive their discounts. And they will look to go to their normal schedule of discounts for Tuesdays for seniors and Wednesdays for everyone else after the Cup Match holidays. So I want to say thank you to the Lindo's stores for working with the Government of Bermuda to try to make sure that reduce congestion by providing discount days on multiple days. The necessity to safely reopen the airport and restart our tourism season was underscored by an email I received earlier today. The sender asked me to issue another plea to landlords to be lenient with tenants who, through no fault of their own, have been out of work since the start of the pandemic and unable to pay their rent. I'm encouraging landlords to assist tenants in experiencing financial hardship as a result of this pandemic. We ask that landlords consider realistically assessing their own financial situation and obligations as to how you may be able to assist your tenant, making sure that you speak with each tenant individually. If you're renting to more than one tenant, assess each tenant situation on a case-by-case basis. Make sure that you're taking into account the current ability of a tenant to pay and the history of the tenant's payment record. Landlords are also requested to have compassion for tenants, certainly. We encourage tenants who have the ability to pay their rent to do so in accordance with their current rental agreements. If it comes time to go before the courts and it is shown that you have had income and you were able to pay your rent, then I'm quite certain that the courts will look at your situation in a less favorable perspective. Changes to a lease must be documented and acknowledged by both parties on the agreement reached, including whether any reduction in rent is temporary or if the rent reduction is to be deferred to a later time when the tenants may have more of an ability to pay. In addition, any agreement reached to amend payment terms should be reviewed on a monthly basis, valid up for 90 days. Of course, the government website, coronavirus.gov.bm, has a COVID-19 rent relief form, which is there, which can assist landlords and tenants in working through these issues. This government recognizes that there are difficulties for tenants to pay their rent, whether they're in a residential or commercial property. And I want to say that this is the time for all of us in Bermuda to be understanding, supportive, and compassionate where we are able to do so. Another matter regarding phase 4 is an issue that says that a lot of persons have questioned why the curfew has been kept in place. While we are consistently monitoring the situation, having discussed this, it was determined that with the reopening of bars and nightclubs at the commencement of phase 4, it would possibly be dangerous to open up not only bars and nightclubs, but to remove the curfew at the same time. No one has to look further than the United States of America, which has seen cases and instances where the rise and spread of the virus has been tied to bars being open, and we've seen a number of states start to roll back those restrictions. So we have always done these things in a phased approach. The phased approach has worked very well for Bermuda, and we want to continue this phased approach. So we will see how it works for 1 week, and as it was said on Thursday, the curfew will be reviewed on a weekly basis. It is also important that I remind everyone that wearing your mask is essential. I have been given my own or had multiple versions of conspiracy theories that have been shared with me by persons on social media or WhatsApp. And I've read the cases of people around the world who are refusing to wear masks. Bermuda, very simple. This is not the time to play around with this situation. We wear masks to contain the spread of this virus through droplets when we talk, cough, or sneeze, intended to protect the people around us. We have to understand that persons can be asymptomatic spreaders. That means they don't have a fever, they have no symptoms. However, they may be spreading the virus unknowingly. And that is the reason why, especially in cases and instances where social distancing cannot be maintained, persons are required to wear masks. I wear a mask to protect you, and you wear a mask to protect me. Beyond the containment measures we placed at the border during the initial stages of this pandemic, it has been the public embracing and adhering to the wearing of masks and frequent hand washing or hand sanitizing that has kept our community safe and our healthcare system from being overwhelmed. It is certainly not the time to slip out of the good habits that we as a country have established. We want to go to a place where we will have a long stretch of time where we do not have cases, where we can even remove more and more restrictions. That is important. Recognize we are down to just 2 active cases. Our collective discipline and collective management of this pandemic has been better than demonstrated in larger jurisdictions. And we cannot and will not allow behavior that jeopardizes the health and safety of the community to occur. I also remind the public that violations of these rules that are designed to keep our community safe can always be reported by calling 211. Before I close and take questions from the media tonight, I would like to share with some persons a note of congratulations, as on Saturday, the Minister of Community Affairs and Sports, the Honorable Evita Fogo, and myself had the opportunity to participate in a drive-through celebration of the trophy presentation for the Bermuda Football Association League champions. And I just wanted to recognize them this evening. The Premier Division champs, the North Village Community Club, the First Division co-champs, Devonshire Colts, and St. George's Colts, under 13 champions, the Next Generation Onions, under 15 champions, Warwick Archer Bows, and the under 17 champions, PHC. I congratulate all of you on your successes, and like many Bermudians around the island, I look forward to the days we can all go back to safely enjoying and watching a good football game by our island's top athletes. With that, I want to remind everyone that Phase 4 comes into place on Wednesday, and that is not a reason to let our guard down. It is a reason to make sure that we maintain our vigilance. The first flight is expected to arrive on island on Thursday, and there will be plenty of protection in place at our airport to ensure that we keep our country safe. Recognize we have had a good record of keeping the country safe during this pandemic, and we have every intention of maintaining that good record as we continue to work together. With that, I'm happy to take any questions from members of the media at this time. And I would
Good evening, everyone. Maya Palacio here from Media Maya. Minister Wilson, you mentioned there will be a form for travelers, the Bermuda Travel Authority's form that you mentioned. Now, will the travelers be able, travelers will be paying $75 fee. And my question is, will Bermudian residents also have to pay the $75 fee?
Form is required to be completed by both residents as well as visitors, and the fee associated with the completion of that document is $75. So all persons, either resident or visitor, are required to complete the form as well as pay the requisite $75 fee.
Thank you. The Bermuda Triple Crown will begin early July. Alongside those persons and others, people will be arriving to Bermuda by boat or yacht. So my question is, what testing measurements are put in place for boat travelers, as well as how will they be tested upon arrival?
The the testing regime applies regardless of how you enter Bermuda, either via port with respect to a ship or alternatively through the airport. You must test on arrival. You will then be required to test again at day 3, day 7, and day 14. So it matters not whether you come by ship or by airline.
And how those persons by ship be monitored when they arrive?
Public health monitoring, in order to, fortunately, when you enter Bermuda, you can't just land. There's public health, the Port Health Authority, as well as customs, or you have to make it known that you are arriving to Bermuda on such and such a date. Your anticipated expected arrival time is such and such. So customs as well as Port Health are made aware of that, so the monitoring can take place upon their arrival.
Now we have a number of boats that land. We have a procedure in place and they are monitored. And that is something that we've been doing since the beginning of the pandemic, because it's quiet and people don't see it. But every day, the combined entities from health and the Ministry of National Security go through this as a regular standard operating procedures.
And who are those persons who have been arriving by boat?
Who are the persons?
Yeah, can I ask that?
Of course.
Like travelers coming in
There are a number of boats that come to Bermuda for a number of reasons. And when they come to Bermuda, they dock, they go through the customs process, they go through the public health screening process. There are people that come to Bermuda for a number of reasons.
Okay. Thank you. Minister Keynes, the next question is from inmates at Westgate. What types of learning courses are offered at Westgate facility through the vocational program?
Ms. Palacio, we spoke about this on the last occasion. I shared with you that I was deeply concerned with the requisite programs that we have. At the minute, programs have been suspended because of the pandemic, and that has been since the 21st of March. There are a number of programs that are offered, but in the next few weeks, we're looking at meeting with the education, the entities that are responsible for education, and we're going to look at revamping those. I believe that we can do a lot more in our correction system to make sure that the vocational classes are available and that young men and young women that are incarcerated can take advantage of those programs. We have the ability. Last year, we had a robotics program that was taught by Mr. Darren Butch Burchell, and it was going really well. And then Mr. Burchell had to go back. He moved abroad, and there are a number of things that are started and that we want to advance. Last week I spoke here and I told you about things that we wanted to do with reference to the library and bring the library up to scratch. As a result of our press conference, we had a number of people bring books to our ministry last week Thursday and last week Friday and today, and we're making every step to make sure that the library is refurbished. I believe that vocation and educational courses should be done in tandem, and that our young men and women that are incarcerated should be given the opportunity to better themselves whilst they're incarcerated.
Thank you. Is there
Yes.
a tentative start date for those
There,
vocational
there,
courses?
there isn't a start date, but what I can tell you, we are due to have a meeting with the Westgate Correctional Facility. Last week, at the weekend, I met with a gentleman that's in charge of the Bermuda Construction Association, and he shared with me the plans that he had working with Ms. Walker at the Westgate Correctional Facility, and it is something that we believe we can do to make sure that we have the right people being trained to be productive members of our community.
Thank you. And my final question for you, Minister Keynes, is what step is the Bermuda Police Department in on the investigation of Officer Barbie? If you have.
When I shared, the last time we shared it, we talked about the Officer Barbie. Officer Barbie is on administrative leave.
Mhm.
A superintendent has been assigned to the matter. The superintendent, she has the ability to present her matters, and that is something that is scripted, and it is a specific amount of days, 10 days to file a response. And so we're literally going through the rigor of what the prison rules are to allow the concerns to be heard. She has the time to, in a matter of days, to respond to it, and then it's going through the process. The police commissioner is aware of it, and the process remains ongoing. She is currently still on administrative leave.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Good evening. Don Burgess for Bermuda Broadcasting. Mr. Premier, you said that our safety measures for arriving visitors will be the most stringent in the world and are designed to keep our residents and visitors safe. The Antigua government recently said something similar. Like Bermuda, Antigua has worked hard to bring their active infections down, and by last week they had only one remaining COVID-19 case. However, they opened up their airport, and in 24 hours they are flooded with more than 40 new infections from the United States. What can Bermuda learn from the Antigua's experience?
By having an electronic travel authorization where you require persons to make sure that they have test results prior to arriving, you can mitigate that risk. And so from where we stand, we are relatively certain and confident that we are going to be able to mitigate that risk. I'm certain that the Ministry of Health, in working with the wider government, but I'm sure they're not going to be allowing and authorizing anyone who's coming into Bermuda who may pose a risk due to either their travel history or their symptoms, or the fact that they are not able to produce a negative COVID test. The fact is that we are opening the airport for visitors. We are opening the airport for residents to leave, to attend medical attention, for business travel, to make sure it goes ahead and takes place as an essential lifeblood of our economy. But what we are not doing is opening on the old terms of which we had. I can't speak to what specifically Antigua had in place, but what I can say is if they tested 40 people on arrival and they had positive tests, they probably did not have a pre-testing regime like the one of which we're putting in place. So that onus will be on those persons who are flying here to Bermuda, and it is very important that they go ahead and ensure that they do that. We want people to feel safe when they're getting on a plane. We want them to feel safe when they're coming here to Bermuda. And we believe that we have an opportunity to differentiate ourselves by being a safe place to travel to and a safe place to be in when you are here. And so that is the difference. That is the lesson of which we'll learn. There's a whole lot of persons who are saying that the testing, the pre-testing regime is something that was unrealistic. It's something that we have been very clear is necessary to make sure that we keep our country safe, and we're going to make sure that we hold to it.
Thank you. Also in Antigua and Barbuda, all arriving passengers were required to be tested. However, some visitors from the United States threatened to sue the Antigua government because they tested positive and were required to isolate. Some tourists refused to follow local laws or to be subject to testing and isolation. They argued mandatory quarantine would violate their rights. Antigua has since changed its testing policy, and has Bermuda considered similar legal implications before accepting visitors and requiring them to test?
We have considered, to answer your question, the answer to the question is yes. We have certainly considered those items, but the fact is that law of Bermuda apply to any visitor who arrives in Bermuda, and the laws in Bermuda are very clear regarding the requirement for quarantine, regarding the requirement for testing, and those matters. So if you are test positive, you will be quarantined. You will be fitted with a quarantine bracelet, a bracelet that will go off if you leave your hotel room or the place in which you're staying. Will alert the authorities. The penalties under law, which apply to all persons who are resident, will apply to those persons as well. We are serious about this. But here's the thing, Don. I don't want us to think that Bermuda, of course, number one, we know that Bermuda is not a mass tourism destination. And I don't want us to think that Bermuda is going to, that, everyone who's hanging out on South Beach are going to run and get on a plane and fly to Bermuda. That's probably not the case. What we want is to make sure that persons who have been being safe, who have been doing what they're supposed to do, who aren't going out and hanging out, who are staying with their friends, who are keeping together, who are wearing their masks, who are hand sanitizing, who are doing all those things in our gateway cities, who want to visit their favorite country in the world, which is a very beautiful place, can do it safely. So it's very easy to get caught up in the hysteria of, oh my gosh, if the plane comes, it's going to be full of persons. But we have to recognize that people know before they book a trip to Bermuda, I have the chance of losing my ticket that I paid for because I did not get a travel authorization to board the plane because I was acting a fool the few days before and ended up getting COVID. That's just it. So we have to recognize this is about regulating travel to the country. And I am sure and certain that the many people who've contacted Bermuda Tourism Authority, the people who've reached out to me on social media, etc., they know they're doing their part. They have been acting silly, and they are going to come here and be in a situation where they're going to be COVID-free in a country that only has 2 active cases, and hopefully soon we'll have none.
Thank you. This afternoon, during a Bermuda Tourism Authority webinar, David Dodwell of the Reefs praised government's plan for being the stringent in the world for testing of visitors. But when potential visitors call up and discover all the testing requirements, they decide not to book. He said some of these restrictions are onerous and people are voting with their feet and with their wallets, and they're not coming. And that the protocols are prompting a large number of cancelizations. How do we protect Bermudians from COVID-19, but also help Bermudians in the hospitality industry by not turning off tourists from booking a vacation here?
The only answer I can say is that it's a delicate balance. We think that we've struck the right balance. And we think that with time and understanding, that people will want to travel to a safe destination where they know that they can enjoy themselves without the fear of being exposed to a virus that can be deadly. And that's the direction in which the country is going. There are far too many persons who sacrifice with their jobs, who sacrifice with staying at home, who sacrificed through that period in time of making sure that we had shelter in place and other things. And I'm not going to allow those sacrifices just to go by the wayside. I'm not. So we have laid out the positioning of which Bermuda wants to have. We recognize that it might be tough going at the beginning, but I would encourage hoteliers not to oversell it. I mean, so we're clear. When we're talking about a saliva test on day 3, a saliva test takes a minute and you're right inside the cheek and then you're gone. The fact is, if you've been doing what you were supposed to be doing before you got here, then you shouldn't worry about getting tested upon arrival. And you should want to be in a place that is safe, want to be in a place that's knowing that where you're coming from a country where there is more exposure than they are here, that the country is looking out for your safety so you can enjoy yourself in a safe environment. And I think that over time, visitors will appreciate that. Right now, it may be hard for them. Right now, it may be difficult for them. But I think I would encourage our hoteliers to tell a different story. Tell the story of we are going to a safe country and make sure that persons are safe. That's the story which I would tell. But we're not going to relax our requirements just because people want us to keep our citizens less safe.
Thank you. We're hearing through that foreign children are scheduled to fly into Bermuda when the airport reopens to visit relatives here and avoid the virus in their countries this summer. The health minister confirmed that children under the age of 10 will not be subjected to PCR tests. This means children can get off the airplane and go straight into the summer camps with other Bermudian children with nothing more than a temperature check. We are hearing from many concerned parents who are worried about this. How does this square with your promise not to have, or sorry, how does this square with your promise to have the most stringent safety regime in the world?
What I would say on that,
That was the question that was similarly asked last week, and I can appreciate the parents' concern. But as the chief medical officer who is present, but she's relayed to us that the likelihood of transmission of COVID-19 from a child under the age of 10 is very, very, very remote, and the evidence and scientific evidence supports that.
A 10-year-old arriving with a family will not have to be tested, but they do have to be quarantined, just to be clear, so that they're not, it would not be safe for them to go right into their usual activities on the island. So I think the scenario that you described is not one that we would expect to happen.
Okay, thank you. Similar to a question that I asked about a couple weeks ago with expat guest worker kids, this is about overseas children who are able to come in untested and go straight to the summer camps, taking places away from Bermudians who can't get their kids in. How do we monitor that?
well, I can't speak necessarily to taking places away from persons because, as I said before, the government does not regulate who private camps accept and don't accept into their camps. In respect to government red camps, the application is made locally, and we would not exclude a Bermudian child who is at school overseas from attending a summer camp when they are home for the holidays. And the good news is that a number of persons who are waitlisted from the government summer camps have now been given places, and the minister assures me that by next week, all persons who are waitlisted will find a place in the government summer camp. So I think we're doing a good job of making sure we expand that capacity. It's something that we pledged to do for the young people of this country and the parents of this country, and we've managed to do that as well.
Thank you very much. My last question, the lead story on the British Broadcasting news is that the World Health Organization, which warns that the worst is yet to come from the coronavirus pandemic, officials in Canada and the European Union have called for a block on travelers from the United States due to the recent huge spike in U.S. cases. We've seen a petition in Bermuda over the weekend and your subsequent explanation about the robustness of our proposed testing regime. Do the statements today from the WHO and the comments from the EU and Canada about banning U.S. travelers give you pause for thought?
It's always a risk, and that's the thing. But being in government and making decisions on a daily basis, that's what this is about. And you have to look at it, and you have to look and balance all factors. Would I have preferred that our major source of tourists and the place where daily flights will start from in next week was doing a better job of managing and control the virus? Absolutely. But at the same time, I'm also confident with what we have laid out is going to work for us and going to prevent and to minimize the risk. And the beauty of it is with an electronic travel authorization form, you can adjust as you wish, and you can let people know the requirements are maybe there. So you may have different requirements for persons who may be coming from Canada, or maybe coming from the United Kingdom, or maybe coming from the United States, and allows you to have that through the electronic travel authorization process. So we are going to approve travelers based upon the response of which they give to the electronic travel authorization form. And I think that we're going to get that balance right. It's a difficult one. I recognize that people are seeing, watching CNN and seeing all the spikes of cases and seeing, what's going on and are we going to invite that here? The answer is no. I have no desire to put this country at risk. But what I do know is that air service is vital to our economy. Air service is not only vital to our tourism sector, it is also vital to our international business sector. And in a country where our tourism sector is on its knees due to a global pandemic, we want to make sure that our international business sector can continue to remain strong. These are one of the things that you've heard the minister speak about, quick wins. One of the things which have also come from the international business community about, reopening visitor traffic, certainly for many cases and instances. And if you look at, our unionized workers who are looking forward to getting back to work inside of our hotel properties, this is something I think that we can manage well and we can balance it. So yes, it is a risk, but every decision that this government has made has benefits and has risks. And that's what we have to do. We have to balance it to make sure we get it right. I think that we have struck the right balance, and I think that it is going to be a success for us. And we'll see over the next few weeks.
Premier, if you can allow me to add. Don, also the Premier's leadership through this pandemic, he has shown that he is not afraid to make difficult decisions. If you can look from the moment this pandemic started, the Premier had to make some very difficult decisions on behalf of the over 60,000 people that live in Bermuda. And at every juncture, with the consultation with the public health team and the Ministry of National Security, the Premier has made some really difficult decisions. And what we can be safe in is that if the need comes for the Premier to make a difficult decision, he never hesitates to do so.
Thank you. I appreciate your thoughtfulness in your answers.
Good evening. Mr. Keynes, this question is for you. My first question. Fake news, rumors circulating throughout some fake news circulating throughout the community today, rumors of a body found in the Warwick Point area. Can you confirm that the police has brought a cadaver sniffing dog to assist in finding Chevelle Dylan Burgess?
It is unwise to proffer comment on the specifics of the Chevelle Dill investigation. You'll be happy to note that the investigation is paramount in all of our minds, and the Bermuda Police Service is leaving no stone unturned with reference to locating Miss Dill.
It's Miss Dylan Burgess.
It's Dylan Burgess, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the correction.
Can you, one more question for you, my second question. Can you confirm that the police officer, the victim in the sexual assault incident, has filed judicial review documents with reference to the DPP's decision to withdraw charges and not charge the two officers? TNN has also learned that you, the Minister of National Security, and the police commissioner was named parties in the action. Is this true?
That is correct. The judicial review was filed in the Supreme Court of Bermuda. I, in my capacity as the Minister of National Security, the Commissioner of Police, the two officers in the matter, as well as the Attorney General, are named parties in this matter.
My final question for you, sir. With the airport private jet area expecting to be a rise in jets coming in, what protocol, will the same protocols be in place for these private jet areas? And will you have individuals ready at any given time, be it be late in the wee hours of the morning?
That's a very good question, Trevor. Excuse me, just had some water down the wrong pipe. I know, Premier, don't panic. Don't panic. That is just some water going down the wrong pipe. Trevor, the reason why I say that's a good question, because people oftentimes see private jets coming in at the wee hours in the morning, and they wonder, is there anyone at the private jet facility? We have a team on standby at all times that have the ability to make sure that all of our health protocols and our customs protocols are being followed at all times. We have a document that comes in. It has to have the signature of a number of ministers before planes land. It has to be, the plane has to file the requisite documentation several hours in advance. And so we know when the plane's coming and it's signed off, and our teams are at the private jet facility waiting to administer all of the health protocols and all of the national security protocols prior and during that plane's landing in Bermuda, sir.
Thank you. My question for Premier, this one's for you. The suspension of pension and social insurance has been passed in both houses, the House of Assembly and the Senate. And it was stated that the government will be starting the scheme starting July the 1st. However, forms has not been filed. Forms have to be filed out, documents of disagreements for employers and employees. The forms are not available yet. Will they be available when the suspension of private pensions and social insurance pensions commence?
Has come into place. I think I actually signed the matters to go to the governor, so they may have gotten their assent today, and it goes into place on Wednesday. I would say that the answer is yes. I'm not entirely certain that they require a form, however. I think it is what they require is agreement of the employee and the employer. There may be guidance forms, but the law, I think, is rather clear. I seem to remember that debate, and the fact is that if the employee and the employer agrees, then that is going to be suspended, and that suspension, as per the law, can take effect on the 1st of July.
Thank you. My next question for you, Premier, I think is question 5. Premier, you stated at the beginning of the month, June the 1st, you stated you're not giving up on the tourism season. We've had a discussion and interview over on Friday, and you said that it might be challenges with tourists coming to Bermuda. The planes are not going to be full. You are aware that the Rosedon guest house has shut its doors until next year. It looks like a bleak tourism season for retailers, restaurants, and hotel workers. What might you say to comfort these individuals that's going to be employed until possibly next year, March, April?
What I can say to comfort those persons, first, let me start by saying I want to thank the management and staff of the Rosedon Hotel for doing right by their employees and making sure that they paid them their full redundancy packages with the decision in which they made, which of course was not an easy decision to make. But I want to pay tribute to them for being good employers and recognizing the challenges of which they foresaw, and then to go ahead and give those redundancy packages to their staff. And that is certainly an example of good employers, and I certainly want to recognize and pay tribute to the good employers in that instance. It is going to be difficult, Trevor. It is certainly going to be difficult. I make no bones about it. So remember, we have two types of tourists in Bermuda. We have air visitors, of where air capacity is going to be down significantly. I think our capacity this July compared to last July is going to be down 92%. So it's certainly going to be difficult for all of our hotels to open and to survive when the capacity is down to that level. And hotels are going to have to balance the difference between, you looking at with the cough, let me drink some water. I don't want the minister and national security to get staring at me. It's going to be a challenge, and hotels are going to have to judge, like the Rosedon did and others, whether or not it will cost them less to close temporarily and reopen, or whether it will cost less to operate during at a reduced loss or minimal profit during the time. You understand what I'm saying? So these are the challenges that various hoteliers are going to have to go through and have to consider. But August is a different month than July. So in August, we're expecting additional airlift, and we will expect additional properties that may come online. We're not expecting, as I said, I'm not prepared to write off our tourism season, and we're not going to write off our tourism season, but we know that we're not going to have a tourism season like we did in the past. But during this pandemic time, it'll be an opportunity for Bermuda to make itself known as a safe jurisdiction, a place where we take precautions, a place where you do need to get tested beforehand, and you will get tested when you're there, but you will ensure that all the enjoyment of which you have is in a safe community. And you can see other places where they're slowly begin to loosen the restrictions. The way that I see it, Trevor, is that we continue to have excellent protections at our borders. We continue to go through this process of making sure that we have people who are coming in, being tested, making sure that they are maintaining their distance and doing what is necessary. Visitors who will coming back, residents who are coming back to the island, having to make sure they abide by the rules as well. And in the future, in the next few days, or sorry, the next few weeks, there's a hope that we can even relax more and more restrictions as we continue to go in a place where we have minimal active cases. I think that we can do that, and that is my hope, and that's the reason why we put in place these strong restrictions. The tourism sector will struggle, but they will struggle more if we keep our airport closed.
My final question, thanks to Mrs. Batamosi Wilson. Sir, with the BFNM pension scheme in place, and we have many of our folks on financial assistance, and I'm sure some of those have applied, what will be the process for these individuals that might be, should I say, be allowed to partake in this scheme? Would, especially for them to pay off debt, pay off bills, getting $12,000, would they be suspended, you think, off of the financial assistance program?
That's a question that I think we've answered before. And when the cabinet considered this specifically, the last thing we wanted to do was recognize that we're in a difficult situation. So
Just want to clarify, because this is asked by somebody as client.
The short answer to your question is no, that will not disqualify someone for financial assistance.
Thank you, sir. Good stuff.
Yes, good evening, panel. Good evening, Premier. If you don't mind, I will ask all of my questions all in one. I don't have 6 questions, just for your information. And really, it has nothing to do with what was stated today. On review, even though I was aware as a live journalist producer who has directed live broadcasting, I will refer you to the videotape of this news conference last Thursday. I believe it was June 25th, at which time I happened to ask you in between a question and intercepted. And your director of communications to my right, Ms. Aderonka Batamosi Wilson, took it upon herself to cross the floor and instruct the audio person, who is hired by CITV, not her department, and instructed her to cut the video. I've reviewed the video, or 1 hour, 25 minutes, and however many seconds. You, on review of the tape, will find yourself aware that once she cut my mic and found out she didn't have the power to stop the interview, continued to mute my questions, and on my very last question was seen to do the cut move. All right? I'm glad to see she can count tonight, because of the 5 times I've been here, I've seen her reduce Trevor Lindsay's 6 questions down to 5 one night, 4 the next night, 3 the next night, all in front of you. I'm not sure if she took it upon her own initiative. Quite frankly, if she was authorized to cross the floor and let all journalists in this room talk openly, you'll find the audio is crystal clear. That transcended and crossed constitutional lines. I'm talking freedom of speech, freedom of the press. And my question to you, sir, is, does the David Byrd administration support, uphold, and condone censorship on the part of a non-elected official who, by any other standards in the rest of the world, as a press secretary, introduces the elected leaders of this country or the leadership and then steps aside? You have 2 lawyers here. I don't need a courtroom to state my case, but in the court of public opinion, there is an apparent personal bias that's being exhibited by the individual who, in fact, is not the director of this department. The director of CITV is Janelle Ford, my longtime colleague, who's alongside of me produced, edited, scripted, and directed many a newscast, countless. The record speaks for itself. My question is, are you aware of what she did? How is it that every other journalist gets to ask the questions? The audio is crystal clear. Young man, I don't know you, but I'm hoping when I see the video tonight, there is no cut in the audio. She's a non-elected official. We're talking a career spanning 30 years.
Ms. Wilson, if you have a question to ask, or else
My
I might
question
ask
is,
the
do you
audience to cut
support
myself.
censorship,
Are
sir?
you finished?
Because this is on your watch.
Are you finished?
Yes.
I do not support censorship, no. But what I do make sure is that the officers, the public officers, do their job. Ms. Aderonka Batamosi Wilson is the Director of Department of Communications, which includes the people who do the graphics and also CITV. Her job is to make sure that people ask 6 questions and the media, and so she's going to do her job, and I'm going to support her for doing her job. Sometimes persons will complain. The other day, the Royal Gazette was getting upset. The other day, Don Burns was getting upset.
But no
I
other
think-
journalist mic has been cut, sir. That's censorship that
Well-
crossed constitutional grounds.
Well, I would say
You have
probably.
2 lawyers here.
Okay,
Maybe
well,
they need
Ms.
to brief
Wilson,
you.
clearly you're not trying to listen, so I'll let you speak, and then I'll ask
I'm
the mic to be cut.
finished.
Thank you. Next.
Owen Johnson Barnes, Royal Gazette. Start off with a little bit of housekeeping. Dr. Peekball, you mentioned in response to a question earlier tonight that if someone under the age of 10 comes in, they would be subject to quarantine and as a result would not be able to immediately go into a camp. I was just curious of what duration that quarantine period would be.
It is 14 days. Just to be clear, the gold standard for managing COVID-19 is a 14-day quarantine. Because the policy of the government will be to have to try to partner with tourism so that we can open up the economy, we have been asked and tasked with finding a way to do that in a way that is safer for the community. So the 14-day quarantine is by all means the gold standard, and that is what we would aim to do generally speaking, but it is not consistent with an attractive tourism product. And so the many measures that were discussed tonight are put in place for travelers to the island in an effort to approach the level of security for the island that a 14-day quarantine would otherwise do. So in the case of children who are not being tested, they would need to be subject to that gold standard of 14-day quarantine. So they wouldn't be joining camps and going into the community as they ordinarily would.
So if there was a family of 4 coming to the island as visitors and 2 of them were under the age of 10, the children would be required to stay in the hotel room for the entire 14-day period?
Scenario planning is very important. And actually, because we're operationalizing the policy so quickly, we have not been able to guarantee that we've thought through every scenario. So this is a good scenario for us to think about in this moment and going forward in the next 24 hours. 2 individual children who are not tested are not able to move about the island. That wouldn't be safe. And so our priority is safety. They would have to stay in the room. The adults, having been tested, assuming they have their pre-arrival test and have a arrival test that's negative, would have freedoms that the children wouldn't have. And so indeed, somebody would have to stay back and look after the children in that scenario. But as you can imagine, there are an infinite number of scenarios. And I think what people have to understand is the principle. The principle is that COVID-19 has a pre-symptomatic and an asymptomatic phase. So individuals who test negative, it is a moment in time. If they have been exposed up into the moment that they arrive on island, they could actually convert to positive at any time. So subsequent tests are necessary. And in the absence of that, a 14-day quarantine is necessary. So I hope that
Given
clarifies.
that, can children under the age of 10 go through the tests as an adult would? Just to
Yes, there are ways to do a nasopharyngeal swab on children. It requires a smaller swab. And certainly the emotional trauma of having a somewhat invasive procedure in an environment that is not their usual healthcare setting is not ideal. And with the input of pediatric expertise on the island, we concluded that it would be safer given the low risk and given the option for quarantine for them if they did not have to be subjected to that. But that is certainly an option. There is a way to do that test on children.
All right. The travel authorization. The website comes online tomorrow. The first flights come in on Thursday. What is the processing time? Obviously, there are no applications yet. What's the estimated processing time? Will it be in a matter of minutes, hours, days, weeks?
recommendation with respect to the completion of the travel authorization is within 48 hours of travel. So when you have an opportunity, in fact, we were testing it this afternoon, and when it will go live tomorrow. So when you have an opportunity to see it, it asks a series of questions such as whether or not you've been exposed to someone that's positive for COVID. I'm just going by memory. Whether or not you have any particular symptoms, vomiting, diarrhea, et cetera, et cetera. So it goes through quite a number of detailed questions concerning your health and so forth. Once that's been submitted with the requisite fee, then on the back end, it'll be reviewed and you'll receive some type of prompt that will indicate via email that it's like the ESTA, that the authorization has been approved. You are now free to travel. Upon your arrival to your port of departure, you would obviously have your passport or whatever legal travel documents you're required to enter into Bermuda, as well as this authorization. We are suggesting that you take a hard copy, but oftentimes people are putting it on their smartphones as well, so that you have a copy. So you have to present, in addition to your travel documents, the actual travel authorization, which is allowing you from the ministry, from the government, to arrive in Bermuda.
Sir, what was the processing time was the question.
I can't answer that quite frankly, but we're requesting that information be submitted within 48 hours. So you'll obviously have the information as soon as it's turned around, but offhand, I don't know exactly how long it will be taken, but they'll be processed as expeditiously as possible, because obviously people need to know whether or not they're able to arrive. So the sooner you fill out the form in advance of your travel, the better.
Now, we obviously have heard the news of Rosedon being closed until next year. We have heard that as many as 6 other hotels are in a similar position where they are questioning whether they can open this year or whether they have to hold off until next year. I'm wondering whether the government is concerned that the number of who are currently laid off will become a surge of redundancies.
There is no question that the government is concerned, and that's the reason why we have to balance all of the decisions of which we have to make carefully, recognizing that tourism is an important employer, and we want to ensure that we can support as much economic activity in this country during a global pandemic, which is challenging even the biggest countries that have the ability to print money, which we do not have here in Bermuda. So yes, it is certainly a concern, but that's why we're going to continue our work through making sure that we keep our country safe and promoting the safeness of our country to our tourism partners. And we believe that in the end, it will be a strategy that will be successful. What we're not going to do is we're not going to cut corners and put at risk the sacrifice that this country has worked for to get us to a place where we only have 2 active cases, and the hard work of which we've done in order to get us to this point. We're not going to sacrifice that. So we will balance very carefully, and we'll do what's necessary to try to get more and more persons back to work. July, of course, is going to be a very difficult month, as we're only going to have 8% of the airlift that we had last year. August is going to do better, with American Airlines restarting their service, other airlines restarting their services as well. So we'll look to have more capacity coming to the island and more support for our hotel properties. But absolutely, they're going to examine that, and they're going to make the decisions which are in the best interests of their business. And the government will be there to support people, because there's one thing I can assure you of, Owen: Bermudians will not go hungry in this country while I lead it.
If I have one more, then.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Technology is great.
Okay.
The travel authorization, the confirmation would be pretty much automatic, but certainly within 24 hours.
Just follow up to the hotel. Are there any considerations of tax reduction to help benefit the hotels, room taxes and things like that, to help try and keep hotel room costs down?
The Minister of Finance will actually be here on Thursday, so he might be able to go into those items. Those are things that are certainly underneath his remit, but I would say that all possible support that can be given to the hotel industry, just as other sectors of hospitality industry, will be considered and will be given. We want to make sure that we support our hotel industry, as it is vital for employment. But at the same time, as we see persons who may be redundant, that's why it's very important that we have our immigration policies aligned, so that Bermudians who can be reemployed in other hotel hotel properties can be suitably reemployed in those other hotel properties which may be open. So it's going to be a difficult period for us. We always known that it's going to be a difficult period, but I think the unity of the country will see us through. And so whether or not that is, the international business sector who's doing their part, the corporate sector here in Bermuda, the churches who are doing phenomenal work, the community organizations and others, making sure that people aren't going hungry, making sure that people are being taken care of, and that work is going to continue. It is hard work. The pandemic, the health part may be coming to a close. The economic reality is that we have to face. So the cabinet of the country has to look at the decisions of which we're going to make going forward for the economy, and has to make the best decisions possible in the interest of making sure that our economy can get moving again. Some of the decisions aren't going to be popular. Very few of the decisions of which we've made over the past 3 months have been popular, and there's always an impact to those decisions. But we have to focus on getting our economy back up and running again. And it's especially hard when our tourism industry is going to be challenged for the foreseeable future, until certainly next April, until hopefully we might be able to get it back to some semblance of full strength. But most people do not believe that tourism will return to the levels where it was before the pandemic until 2022 or 2023.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Adironka Badamosi Wilson. I want to thank you for your excellent work, of which you continue to do on a team which has been lauded for their excellent communications throughout this pandemic. We will be back here with you again on Thursday. Just as a reminder to everyone that phase 4, our new normal, starts on Wednesday. Please make sure to continue to practice social distancing. Please make sure to continue to wear your mask. Please continue to make sure that you observe what we've been observing all this time, which has helped to keep our country safe. And with that, Bermuda, I want to say thank you for listening and good night.